Currently, I am a 37-year-old man, still living with my mom. I have zero friends, and I've never really had any friends. I also have virtually no relationship experience to speak of, but it didn't have to be like this. What if I told you I could have been in the popular crowd back in high school? I had the opportunity to go out with the hottest, most popular girl in my entire school. And all I had to do was this one simple thing. But I didn't do it. Why? Well, let me explain it like this. There's this question people have been asking me my entire life that I've never really known how to answer. And every time someone asks me this question, it's just a reminder of how all the struggles I've experienced in my life, all the loneliness, the fact that I'm in my late 30s and I have basically no life experience whatsoever, it's all my fault my life is like this. See, I was always the quiet kid growing up. I have what I would call a severe case of social anxiety disorder, and because of that, I've always been afraid to speak up. So I can't even tell you how many times people have asked me that unanswerable question, why do you never talk? So in this video, I want to talk about some of my experiences growing up being the quiet kid and how my crippling social anxiety caused me to miss out on basically every fundamental developmental milestone a boy is supposed to experience growing up. I would say I hope that this can be taken as a cautionary tale of how not to act in certain critical social situations, but honestly, if you have social anxiety to the degree that I have social anxiety, knowing what you should do or what you should say isn't the problem. The problem is that there's this overwhelming fear that feels impossible to conquer. So even if I knew exactly what to say in a certain situation, I just wouldn't be able to make the words come out my mouth. So let's get into it. By the way, by the end of this video, I'm hoping to actually have answered the question of why it is that I never talk. My crippling fear of social interaction goes back just about as far as I can remember. I do have some early memories of being a little bit more outgoing back when I was really young, like maybe 7 years old or younger. But even then, I did have social anxiety. It just wasn't quite as bad. Probably because I just didn't have as much awareness about the world around me at that age. But for most of my life, I can only imagine that everyone I went to school with, or anyone that had to be around me for any extended period of time, they probably thought I was mute or something. Or maybe they thought I was nonverbal autistic. I actually almost got held back in either second or third grade because my teacher thought I couldn't read because I was too afraid to read out loud in class. Then in eighth grade, I almost failed my English class because we had to do these worksheets every day. This is actually a good example of how social anxiety isn't just about talking. A big part of it is also just having this hyper awareness of the physical space you're taking up and feeling this powerful fear about how your every movement is being perceived. So we had to do these worksheets every day, and we would have like 20 minutes to finish it, and we were supposed to just stand up and go turn it in on the teacher's desk whenever we finished. But I had too much anxiety to actually stand up and walk across the room because I felt like when I stand up to go turn in my worksheet, everybody's going to be looking at me. And I don't know, maybe they'll think I walk funny, or they'll just see me and they'll notice how ugly I am or how weird I am. I was also worried about getting in someone else's way because I didn't know if after I stood up to go turn in my worksheet, somebody might try to go turn theirs in at the same time, and you had to walk through a kind of narrow aisle between people's desks to get to the teacher's desk. So, I don't know. Obviously, it was an irrational fear, but that's what happened. So I would fill out the worksheets every day because every day I'm thinking, well, maybe today I'll actually be able to get up and go turn it in. But without fail, every single time I would finish my worksheet, which only took about 3 minutes. They were really easy. And then for the rest of the 20 minutes or however long it was, I would just be sitting there looking around, waiting for the perfect moment, trying to work up the courage, and it just never happened. So then when I had to take home my progress report, my mom saw that I had a bad grade in English, so she called the teacher, and the teacher told her it was because I had zeros on all my worksheets. Apparently, I actually had the highest grade in the class for quizzes and tests. It was just the worksheets that was killing my grade. Or that's what my mom said the teacher told her. So I didn't want to tell my mom. I was too afraid to walk across the room to turn in my worksheets because, I don't know, I guess I was just embarrassed by it. But also, I don't think my mom would understand that anyways. So I just told her that it was hard to tear the sheets out of the workbook. It was like a workbook that had all the worksheets in it and they were all perforated so you could tear the pages out. So I tried to play it off like I literally wasn't able to tear the sheets out. So then the next day in class, my teacher calls me over to her desk in the middle of the class while everyone else was quietly working on their worksheets. And she made a big deal about telling me, very condescendingly, she was like, "So your mother tells me you have an issue with tearing out the worksheets? So look, it's easy. All you have to do is you grab the paper here at the edge and," she basically was talking to me like I'm retarded, which, I mean, I guess I kind of was in a way, but she made me practice tearing out a couple pages right there at her desk. And then she was like, "See how easy that was? Okay, now I want you to go back to your desk and tear out all your old worksheets that you were supposed to turn in already and bring them back over here to me." So she let me turn them in late, which was nice of her, I guess. But here's the thing. This is how irrational social anxiety can be. I do think a lot of social anxiety does have a rational basis, by the way, because I have had some negative social experiences. Actually, I've had a lot of negative social experiences. But in this case, it was completely irrational and it totally backfired. Because the next day after that, the teacher told the whole class that my mom had called her because she was concerned with my grade. That's right, you heard that correctly. My 8th grade English teacher, who surely realized that I was suffering from some sort of anxiety disorder, she got up in front of the whole class and she told everyone about how happy she was to see that there's still a concerned parent in this world. Which she could have said all that and left it anonymous, but no. She decided to tell the whole class that my mom called her because she was concerned about my grades. Okay? She used my name. She told everybody it was me and it was my mom. So that was extremely embarrassing. And apparently she didn't only tell this to my class. She told all her classes. Because before I even had class that day, some other kid had told me about it. He told me that the teacher told his class that my mom had called her. And then later, some other kids were telling me about how she told their class too. So that was a nightmare. I mean, I can only assume the teacher was trying to embarrass me because how fucking unaware would you have to be to not realize how embarrassing that would be for me? She's basically telling the whole school that I was making a bad grade. Obviously, nobody would want that. Especially considering I'm sure she knew I had some kind of social anxiety condition. But I digress. I mentioned that I could have been in the popular crowd if it weren't for the fact that I was the quiet kid, so let me expound on that a bit. Growing up throughout all my childhood up to the age of 16 or 17, I was not a cute kid. I had bad teeth, I never wore cool clothes, and I was fat. So all that in combination with my extreme social anxiety, that's a recipe for social isolation. But for a couple years, basically my junior and senior years of high school, and a little bit in my sophomore year too, I had a glow up. I had a bit of a transformation where I got a lot better looking. I got in better shape. I got a better haircut. I got my braces off, which that might have been the most impactful thing. And I also started dressing better. But basically, I had a big glow up and people definitely noticed. I ended up actually making friends with this one popular guy, and he even invited me to a party one time. Now, that was actually a really bad experience. I talked about that in the very first video I ever posted on this channel, so I'm not going to repeat the whole story here. But basically, I went to this party and this older guy that was there started picking on me, and I literally ran away. I went out the back door and then I started running down the street and I hid in the woods. And then later, after that, I realized that my so-called friend that had invited me to that party, he just wasn't a good friend. I mean, we never were friends, really. We only hung out twice, and the second time, he was clearly just using me for a ride. So, yeah. But here's the thing. I do think that that guy, when he invited me to that party, at that point, I think he did want to be friends. I think it was just that after what happened at the party and how I had to run away and everything because I couldn't handle a difficult social situation, I think he just realized that being friends with me would be more work than what it was worth to him. Now, you can say that guy was probably just a douchebag from the start, so maybe I dodged a bullet there. We were both young, by the way, so I don't hold it against him. But him giving me a chance and then ultimately deciding to not pursue the friendship any further after he realized I just wasn't able to function like a normal human being in social situations, that is a pattern I encountered over and over again throughout that brief period where I was actually kind of good looking. Although usually it was on a much smaller scale. By the way, my glow up didn't last long because I started going bald at a really early age, but there's several times I can think of where I didn't always realize it at the time, but looking back now, I'm pretty sure people were trying to get to know me or trying to make friends with me, but I just could never manage to say anything. Like, usually I just wouldn't say anything at all, quite literally. So, one example I can think of, in class one day, for some reason, everyone was talking about where different people live. And I had actually just recently moved to a new neighborhood. But this one girl was like, "Wait, where does Loser Maxing live?" And I said the name of the neighborhood I just moved to. And this one popular guy that was there was like, "Dude, you live on Grove Street? I live on Grove Street. I didn't know you lived there." So I think I said something like, "Yeah, I just moved there." Obviously, it wasn't actually called Grove Street, but yeah. So then later that day, between classes, that guy and another popular guy came up to me in the hallway, and the first guy was like, "Hey, Loser Maxing, I told Jake that you just moved into the neighborhood. He lives there too." And then the other guy was like, "Hell yeah, we got a new drinking buddy. Where do you live exactly?" So I just told him which house I lived in, and that was about it for that conversation. By the way, I'm recounting this the best I can from memory. These aren't exact quotes, but I remember the guy said something about, "Hey, we got a new drinking buddy." So I'm pretty sure he was referring to me, obviously, based on the context of the conversation. So I kind of expected after that, those guys would eventually invite me to hang out, but they never did. I hardly ever even talked to either of them after that. But it makes sense, from their perspective, they put in the work to initiate a friendship or whatever you want to call it. They expressed interest in hanging out, and then the ball was in my court. But just the way I basically didn't say anything at all. And another part of my social anxiety is that my facial expressions a lot of times are the facial equivalent of silence, if that makes sense. I'll just have a blank expression, and also I literally will be silent because I'm too shy to say anything. So during that conversation, when the guy said the thing about us being drinking buddies, I just didn't say anything. I just kind of looked at him and I didn't say anything. Probably didn't even smile. So from his perspective, it probably seemed like I didn't want to be friends. Now, in reality, I desperately wanted to have a social circle. I would have loved to hang out with these guys. Not even because they were the cool, popular guys, but I wanted to have some friends because I didn't have any. So the one simple thing I could have done that possibly could have changed the whole trajectory of my life is I should have just spoke up. All I had to do was say anything like, yeah, cool, that sounds like fun. Or just something simple like that. Not just in that one case, but I had other times like that too, where if I had just spoke up and said something, maybe I wouldn't be a total loner right now. I mean, I did speak up enough with the one guy that I went to that party with the one time, and sure, that friendship never blossomed into anything really. But eventually, if I spoke up enough times, because I had more than one opportunity to make social connections, maybe I could have made some real friendships or even got some romantic experience. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I had the opportunity to go out with literally the hottest girl in my school. She was rubbing my leg with her foot under the table and staring at me seductively. Then she tried talking to me after class, asking me questions like what I like to do for fun and stuff like that. Now, in the past, when I've told this story, a lot of people comment that she was probably just messing with me, but I really don't think so. I'm pretty sure she was actually making a move on me. But at the time, I did kind of think maybe she was just joking. I wasn't really sure. But either way, I totally fucked it up. All I had to do was say, let's hang out sometime. Even after that encounter, which I completely fucked up, I think I almost made her cry actually, because I accidentally said something way too loud because my anxiety was just making it hard to control the volume of my voice properly. But anyways, even after that, I'm sure if I had just been like, hey, do you want to hang out? She probably would have said yes. And who knows? Maybe I still would have fucked it up later on, but maybe that could have been my first girlfriend. Or at least I could have got some sort of experience instead of the current timeline we're living in, where I missed out on every developmental social milestone a guy's supposed to have during his youth. You know, I never even kissed a woman until I was 36, which was pathetic, by the way. Although, sure, that is something. I know a lot of guys never even had that experience at all. But you're supposed to have your first kiss when you're still young, and your first girlfriend and everything. Those are developmental milestones. If you miss out on these things, like I did, then it's a good chance you're going to have some kind of negative mental or emotional effects. In fact, it's almost guaranteed you're going to have some kind of negative effects. If nothing else, it means you're going to be unexperienced and unprepared for certain situations in the future. So, yeah, it's bad. It's a big deal. I firmly believe that the trajectory you're on in your youth, in most cases, that pretty much determines the rest of your life. Or not that it determines the rest of your life necessarily, but it makes things a lot harder. It's a lot harder to ever have a fulfilling social life in adulthood if you weren't already on that trajectory at an early age. And it affects your career prospects too. It affects everything. It affects your confidence big time, which that impacts pretty much everything else in your life. It's just really hard to ever break out of the trap of being the quiet guy when you've never not been the quiet guy. I was the quiet kid throughout my whole youth, and I'm still the quiet guy today. It definitely had a negative impact on my job performance at my job when I was an engineer because my supervisor told me at every performance review I ever had that I needed to work on my communication skills. I remember he told me I need to just learn how to shoot the shit with people. And I was just sitting there like, yeah, I know. Tell me about it. It's not that easy. I know I need to loosen up and just relax and learn how to enjoy socializing, but I can't. I can't. I can sit here right now thinking about social situations and what I would say and what I would do, and I can visualize myself being social. But then when the time actually comes and I'm in that social situation, I'm just frozen. It's not a matter of knowing what to do. It's just there's this all encompassing, inescapable fear that stops me in my tracks. It's just freeze cell shit. What can I say? And having always been the quiet guy, especially when I was younger back in school, because I knew that everyone already knew me as the guy that never talks, that made it even harder for me to open up because on top of all the anxiety I already had, I was also dealing with the fact that I have this natural tendency to be a people pleaser. So I was extra cautious about breaking out of the mold of being that quiet guy that I knew everybody expected me to be. I know that sounds stupid, but it is what it is. I just have this thing where by default, I just can't help but try to play into people's expectations whenever I'm in a real life social situation. Which is weird because internally, I'm actually very much a contrarian. Like, I actually get a sense of pride, I guess. Like, it almost feels rewarding to me to go against the grain and argue for an unpopular position. But that's on a deeper conscious level. My people pleasing tendencies are automatic. That's like the automatic survival mechanism operating on the surface level. It's as automatic as breathing. So, I don't know, I'm just a walking contradiction. But really, when I think about it, maybe it's that dichotomy, for lack of a better word. I know that sounds pretentious, but whatever. Maybe it's that dichotomy between my automatic people pleasing tendencies and my deeper internal desire to be true to myself in the face of conflict. It's that discrepancy that I don't know if it causes my anxiety, but it might contribute to just making me always feel so unsure of myself in social situations because I have these two competing forces inside of me. I don't know. But as to the question people have always asked me, why do you never talk? Well, I wish I had a more satisfying answer, but the truth is really simple. I'm a fucking coward. If anything I said here resonates with you, or if you found it entertaining enough to listen to all the way through, please consider watching some of my other videos. There's also some secret videos you can watch for free on my Patreon, videos YouTube doesn't want you to see. There's no sign up required, so check it out. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.